time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go.
Okay, you're working your shift and you give a youth a simple command to do something ordinary. And the youth refuses and gives you some attitude. So you give him some attitude back and reissue your command. And then all of a sudden, bam! The whole thing's escalated and the youth is blown up. You may have just taken a trip down the fight or flight highway. Forward. Juveniles function very much like the mentally retarded. The biggest similarity is their cognitive deficit. Teens may be highly functioning, but that doesn't make them capable of making good decisions. Stephen Dreisen, 2004. Argument before the Supreme Court in Roper v. Simmons.
Hi, my name is Dr. Doug Jackson. In this course, we'll be talking about how to more effectively manage youth who are experiencing intense emotions. Now, this course has 4 lessons: Meet Your Brain, The Teen Brain, Avoiding Meltdowns, and Biology and the 5-Step Hard-Style Kata. In this first lesson, Meet Your Brain, we'll take a simple tour of the brain using our hand as a model. After you're done viewing this segment, you won't be qualified to perform brain surgery. But hopefully you will understand why snakes don't have emotions, and yet dogs can seem so loving. The second lesson, The Teen Brain, involves highways and hijackings, but it probably doesn't qualify as an action thriller. In this lesson, you'll learn why the teen brain is different than your brain. The third lesson, Avoiding Meltdowns, looks at some practical implications for dealing with youth who are experiencing intense emotions. And in the final lesson, Biology and the 5-Step Hard-Style Kata, we'll take a step-by-step look at how the biology we've just learned is utilized in the 5-Step Hard-Style Kata.
When your time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it.
Every day you work with students who are experiencing anger, anxiety, and fear. You're familiar with the acting out behaviors that often accompany these intense emotions, and how difficult it can be to manage a youth in the midst of one of these episodes. Episodes that result in fights, student-on-staff assaults, and the use of physical intervention techniques to regain control of students. An understanding of the biology behind these intense emotions can help you to better manage these episodes, or better yet, prevent a situation from developing into a full-blown outburst. An understanding of the biology can also help you avoid inadvertently making a bad situation even worse. Now, we're all subject to strong emotions from time to time. We're all subject to the release of powerful hormones that prepare the body to fight, flight, or flee. Now, as adults, hopefully we've developed a capacity to better consider our current circumstances before we act on that powerful surge of hormones. The youth that you work with, they may look as if they're fully developed adults, but the adolescent brain doesn't fully mature until the early to mid-20s. Physically, their brains are different than yours.
I'm sure that you needed me to tell you that.
Unfortunately for us, the part of the adolescent brain that is least well developed is the connection between the part of the brain that sends out the hormonal fire alarm and the part of the brain that helps us to slow down and consider what's going on before we respond to that fire alarm. An understanding of how to encourage the connections between the fire alarm and the response center can help us in employing the 5-Step Hard-Style Kata in order to gain voluntary compliance, and in order to help us to avoid using that 5th step of physical intervention techniques.
In order to more effectively deal with youth experiencing intense emotions, it helps to have some understanding of the machinery we're going to be talking about. For the purposes of this lesson, let's build a model of the brain using our hands. This hand as brain model was developed by the psychiatrist Daniel J. Siegel. Hold your hand in front of you. and then tuck your thumb into your palm. Your thumb is the limbic system. The fleshy part underneath your thumb is the brain stem, and in this model, your arm represents the spinal cord. Now, wrap your fingers around your thumb. This is the neocortex. That's it. Eyes, ears, nose, brain. The fleshy part underneath your thumb, that brain stem, that is the most ancient part of the brain. Fish have brain stems. Snakes have brain stems. Birds have brain stems. Dogs have brain stems. You have a brain stem.
And you'd better be grateful you do. Your brainstem's the only reason that you don't have to remember to tell your heart to beat, or to breathe, or let's not even think about all those digestive bits. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have a tough enough time remembering where I put my car keys. If I had to remember to tell my heart to beat, I'd be dead in a hurry. The limbic system sits on top of the brainstem. It's often called the old mammalian brain. Have you ever looked into the eyes of a snake or a frog and thought, gee, there is nothing going on in there? Well, if you haven't done this with a snake, you'd probably want to be careful which snakes you did this with. The reason there's nothing going on in there is because reptiles don't have limbic systems. They don't experience emotions. A snake bites you not because he's pissed off at you. A snake will bite you because he's trying to protect himself. The limbic system mediates emotional behavior, motivational behavior, and sexual behavior. The limbic system is where memory starts. Dogs have limbic systems, which is why they can be so loving. Cats have limbic systems, which is why they can seem so aloof. Well, at any rate, if you look into the eyes of a bull after the matador has waved his cape, well, that bull is going to charge you and gore you, not because he's trying to protect himself. He's angry. The cerebral cortex is the new mammalian brain. This is the part of the brain that is so greatly expanded in primates, and especially in humans. This part of the brain creates 3D representations of the world around us and stores them in memory. Representations that give rise to abstract reasoning, planning, imagination, and moral reasoning.
Think of this next section as a buddy movie, with the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex playing the two amigos who sometimes work well together and sometimes don't. The amygdala plays a role in what we pay attention to, in the creation of memory, the generation of fear, of love, of depression, rage. The amygdala is the body's alarm system. The amygdala is so fast that it can react to danger before you even perceive it. Dr. Daniel J. Siegel tells a story about taking a hiking trip with his son. They were walking down a trail when he found himself stopped dead in his track with his arm out to stop his son. And only at that point did he recognize the rattlesnake coiled up in front of them. Dr. Siegel's response was one of the most ancient responses the brain has. Fight, flight, or freeze. If after perceiving the threat, the brain determines that the body stands a fighting chance, it prepares for action. Norepinephrine is released into the brain, increasing the sensitivity of neural circuits so that our sense of sight, of hearing, of smell is acutely focused on the perceived danger, and little else. Catecholamines are released into the bloodstream, producing a surge of energy as the body prepares to fight. Heart rate, respiration rate increase, increasing the flow of blood and oxygen to the extremities, readying them for a burst of action. The mind is focused. The body is primed. Which was all well and good for our ancient ancestors on the African savanna, where the difference between having lunch and being lunch was a matter of seconds. But in modern society, we don't face any saber-toothed tigers. We don't even face many lions. And the sources of intense emotional distress tend not to be measured in a matter of seconds or minutes or even hours. Long-term exposure to these fight-or-flight hormones, ironically enough, can kill you. Chronic exposure to stress, be it anxiety or anger or both, is positively correlated with vascular disease, heart attack, and stroke. The body has a safety mechanism, the prefrontal cortex. In our model, the prefrontal cortex would be represented by the fingernails for the middle and the ring finger, kind of right behind your eyeballs. The prefrontal cortex is the neural circuitry that is the home of planning, of reasoning, of moral development. The prefrontal cortex is capable of tamping down all but the strongest of negative emotions. If the amygdala is the body's alarm system, then the prefrontal cortex is the brain's dispatcher, deciding what to do about the alarm. Let's say you go to a party. Somebody insults you. Your amygdala screams, "Kill!" But your prefrontal cortex says, "Whoa, now just wait a minute. Killing somebody at a party is a really bad idea. Let's wait until tomorrow, and we'll plan our revenge."
Let's review. We've constructed a hand-as-brain model to better understand how different parts of the brain control different functions regulating the body. The brainstem controls the autonomic system that functions largely below consciousness to regulate heart rate, respiration, digestion, and the regulation of body heat. A simple analogy would be that the brainstem handles the plumbing. The limbic system, which sits on top of the brainstem, can be thought of as the brain's center for emotions. The cerebral cortex sits on top of and surrounds the limbic system and is the brain's executive branch. Among many other things, this is where reasoning happens. When we feel threatened, the fight, flight, or freeze response kicks in. The emotional part of our brain sends signals through the plumbing system that heighten our senses and pump up the body to get it ready for action. Although perhaps the most ancient response the body has, this fight, flight, or freeze response can be mediated by the executive branch of the body, which can keep us from overreacting to a situation.
Except with adolescence, which we'll address in the next lesson. See you there.